Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the not the Saturn. Yeah, it is the Saturn Slam. I'm all discombobulated. Saturn
The one and
Slam review.
only
Um,
Shane McSlam.
yeah, we got a lot to talk about, including our trip to the indie show, House of Glory High Intensity 8, which is the reason this video is so late because we both got sick. And considering some other people who were at the event also were sick, I'm gonna blame it on Queens and that seedy ass nightclub that we were all corralled in.
They put playground equipment in there, and they call it a show, and
Yeah,
it was packed.
it was it was packed to the gills. They said they were sold out, but I don't think they had a. I guess like their sellout was the fire marshal will no longer let people in after this many people are in the building. Because it was standing room only. I guess we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the shows in the order in which they happened. We also have Takeover Toronto 2 and Summerslam on tap. Both of them were. It was a mixed bag of stuff. So we'll get to them when we get to them. But yeah, so House of
Slam, more like Slumber Slam.
the middle of the show is an accurate. Yeah. So House of Glory, High Intensity 8, New York City Arena. The arena is a very misleading nomenclature. It is legitimately a nightclub.
Like with a jungle theme. Like there's a giant white, like big cat head on the front when you walk in. I'm like, okay, that's like a cool venue type thing. This will be good. And there's like a jungle foyer.
Yeah, there's no like. Yeah, there's no branding. It's just the giant lion head. There's also like no windows, which I'm pretty sure violates at least 7 building codes.
Classic nightclub setup.
Yeah.
You know, they can get the strippers in there. Out in the country, they don't have all them fancy things, so they just have thick shades. Out on a fucking strip club on the freeway. I've seen a fair few of those.
So where the dance floor would be, there was instead a wrestling ring, and it was probably the smallest wrestling ring I've ever seen. Typically most promotions will use a 16 by 16 ring. WWE uses a 20 by 20. I'd be shocked if you told me this thing was 12 by 12.
Yeah. To their credit, I felt they used it about as well as they could. I did not feel its size once the show got rolling, but yeah, you look at that, and you're like, oh, okay, this is the one.
That's tiny.
This is the demo ring where you go in and you're like, so you want to try a couple moves?
Yeah.
First time wrestling?
There weren't a lot of people running the ropes, so I think that helped mask the size of the ring. We didn't see a lot of people take one step and immediately have to pivot to bounce off the rope.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's that going on. So we'll get into the car. Well, first, it was standing room only because they say. So the first 4 rows of chairs were X price, depending upon which row you sat in. And general admission was a lower price. And we thought we had learned our lesson from the Poughkeepsie show to get on like the actual riser seats. So general admission was the way to go. However, we were fooled by the New York City Arena name, and we're not prepared for it to just be 5 on some sides. Most sides it was just 4. There was like one side of the ring that had additional seating that was general admission, but the rest was standing room only. So there are a lot of people standing. I wisely corralled us over to the like handicap entrance ramp,
Yes.
where we were able to sit on the railing and watch the show with a pretty spectacular view, I must say.
Camped out like jungle rats. Great view. As far as seating goes, better than standing. My ass still hurt after about two hours.
Oh yeah, I had to like alternate and stand sometimes because my ass would literally fall asleep. I'm not 150 pounds anymore. I can't sit indefinitely on a metal railing. After a while, my frame takes its toll on my tushy.
SAG action was real. But the music action was also real, featuring such pre-show bangers as Sweet Caroline and Crystal Waters' Gypsy Woman, which I never thought, Kurt and I never thought would exist in the real world. I thought it was just a deep meme from my own, like, web trawling.
It is what I call a Peter, which is to say, like, a deep dive onto YouTube, like...
How do you find these?
Where do you find these
things?
things?
It's one of those things you wake up with a hangover, and you have the entire Crystal Waters collection next to the Boards of Canada collection on your phone, and a subscription to like Popular Mechanics.
I used to have a subscription to Popular Mechanics and Popular Science. The writing went downhill in both of those magazines. So the show kicked off with I guess they have a match type called a suicidal six-way. They must do it often if it's its own thing. It's its own division. They announced it as a division, and they debuted its own belt today, or on this night. So Charles Manson, which beat Brian Burgundy, Leroy Green, Matt McIntosh, Nolo Kitano, who I don't know if they said was making his professional wrestling debut. That's what I heard, but I've heard other people say it was just his House of Glory debut. Either way, keep that name in your mind, because the man was very impressive, and he was very young. Looking at him, he couldn't have been much older than 20. And he was the most impressive person in this match, which included former, actually current at the time, Impact X Division champion Rich Swann and former Cruiserweight champion, WWE Cruiserweight champion Rich Swann. And I don't know. Charles Manson had a gimmick of being the like rich snobby sort of, the cheap heat rich guy gimmick. But he did pretty well, and he was a fairly solid in-ring guy. There was a guy who came out to a Sonic stage theme, which won him points.
I saw him like, is that Spagonia from fucking Sonic Generations?
Yeah, it won him points in our book, but he quickly squandered those points by botching like 3 moves, and of the 6 he was in there for.
He was the low point of that match, for sure.
Yeah.
Not to be confused with the person lowest in the match, who was great.
Yeah.
I only remember him as the big guy.
Yeah, he says I'm really big. That's on his T-shirt, but he's a mini. He's like I'd say maybe 5'2". We actually got a really close look at him. We were standing in the general vicinity of what I believe was his family. So after his match, he came up and talked with them, and they all congratulated him. I contemplated going up to shake his hand and tell him he was really good out there, but I didn't want to get up at the time.
Yeah.
And just let him be. Maybe it was Leroy Green. No, Leroy Green was Spagonia Man.
Yeah.
Was it?
Who came out to the fucking? Someone came out to the My Hero Academia, like the cool.
That was
theme.
Nolo Kitano. He had the power of God and anime on his side. But he was not to win. But he was definitely the highlight of the match. There were chants of New Guy rocks, and thank you, New Guy.
Mm-hmm.
He was the most over person in this match, far and away. Then there was a women's division match between Violet and Masha Slamovich.
Oh, Masha, that was her name, Masha Slamovich?
Yes. It was very hard to hear.
Ultraviolet was it?
Yeah, Ultraviolet. That's right. It was Ultraviolet. Lest I forget.
It's hard to remember because they just stymied all the momentum from that first match.
Yeah, they went out there and they had a fine match for 2 women who don't look like they've been doing this for very long. There was nothing wrong with their match. It was just slow and not the right match to follow something called a suicidal 6-way.
Yeah. I think if you, I get what they were doing with the suicidal six-way. Hook them in with a
Yeah,
big
hot
switch up
opener.
there.
That's not a bad play, but maybe instead of putting your fucking world championship tournament qualifier match in the depth spot, you put like this in the depth spot. But yeah, they wrestled. Not really anyone cared.
Nothing stand out. You
No.
know, I don't know how long they've been with this group.
Yeah, Masha Slamovich was the baby face. She lost to Ultraviolet after a move. I don't even remember what the move was, to be perfectly honest with you.
It was some like roll up thing.
Yeah.
That's how non-impactful this match was. I just don't even know what the finish is. There was a lot of holds and a lot of
There were holds aplenty.
tosses.
Rest
Yep.
holds aplenty. That led into the the second headline event of this, other than the main event, which was the New York Wrecking Crew versus LAX, the Ortiz and Santana version, not the original Homicide and Hernandez version. But this match was it was billed as a tag team grudge match, and they worked it like it was a grudge match. They did not wrestle much in the beginning. It was a lot of brawling and fighting. I believe Santana.
What we could see was really good.
Yes, there was difficulty seeing things. Can't see shit chants emanated from the arena after a while because they were brawling in the crowd, which is awesome if you're in there in the crowd. But if you're anywhere else in the building, it was very difficult to see because they did not put anything up on their projectors.
No, they had a PowerPoint of the match title card, the actual cards.
Yeah. But they beat on each other for a while. Finally, the match got started and they wrestled, and it was funny. The beginning of the match was marked by a botch by, I think, Ortiz is the guy with the crazy hair. He hit the top rope when he went to do a diving spear, and the guy he was trying to hit tried to salvage it by making it seem like he got him in a choke and a counter, but afterwards, when they cut their promo, he said, "I hope I wind up on Botchamania." And I guarantee you'll see that clip in a future episode of Botchamania.
And he was like, "Thank God I didn't get hurt either."
Yeah. So, New York Wrecking Crew ended up winning what turned out to be a pretty entertaining tag team match once the actual match got started. Of course, actually, the most entertaining part was probably the crowd brawling, but it was what it was, and it accomplished what it needed to do. Afterwards, LAX cut a promo thanking the fans, and they're moving on somewhere, presumably, be it AEW or NXT. I have not heard one way or the other which way they're leaning or if there's a deal in place. They could potentially stay with Impact, but I think that'd be a poor career move.
Agreed.
Which led us to the House of Glory Crown Jewel Championship match between Mantequilla, which is Spanish for butter, and he embraced the gimmick, coming out to the Mucha Lucha theme song. He wrestled Matt Travis, who made a Freddy Krueger entrance and was billed from Elm Street in the Bronx. Matt Travis is a accomplished wrestler, and Mantequilla is a gimmick wrestler, and the Styles clash was readily apparent.
Disclaimer: no Styles clash was actually performed during the doing of this match.
Yes, the move was not the Styles clash was not performed. However, 2 shooting star presses were performed by Matt Travis. Neither of them good enough for a win. Peter, what was the finish of this match, if you don't mind telling the folks?
Well, first of all, it certainly wasn't a kick because, his slogan was "murder by kicks," which, he backed up by showing his biceps and then hitting some elbows off the ropes. But no, the finish was Mantequilla with just an absolutely devastating. Just a real soup bowl of a spinning pie face. Just gave it a once around. Just boom. You never see that anymore.
No, caught him completely off guard. Was enough for the 3 count after Mantequilla kicked out of 2 shooting star presses and various other high impact maneuvers by Matt Travis. Yeah, I mean, hey, he was over. I'll give him that.
He was. These streamers came out.
Yeah, a lot of streamers came out. There was a 3-way between Ken Broadway, Evander James, and Smiley. Smiley's gimmick is he's an insane asylum escapee, I guess. He's got his creepers with him. And he was the most impressive of the 3. He worked really hard, and it was very sad because no one gave a shit about this match.
Yeah.
But he was working his ass off. Evander James, I don't even remember. Ken Broadway, I remember mostly for his very elaborate entrance with 16 people on the stage rapping something. I could not hear a word of it.
We were like, who's Ken Broadway here?
Who's the fucking wrestler? And then he got in. He ended up winning, so he gets a bye in the world title tournament they're doing. So good for him. Yeah. This was a. I won't say it was a bad match because what they were doing in the ring was fine, but when a crowd is dead, and I mean, you hear dead crowd a lot, but this was a nightclub that oftentimes you could not hear yourself think in. Peter and I could have a conversation at normal speaking voice during this match. That's how quiet the crowd was, which is a little unfortunate. Ken Broadway won, and he got the referee to dance, and people had fun with that. And that led into the main event, which was Private Party versus the Young Bucks. Both teams were over, but the Young Bucks were very over in what was their final indie appearance, and they had a Young Bucks match that started with promise, but then when I think it was Matt Jackson hit his fucking overhead suplex loop for the 6th time, it reached the point of, okay, we're in a Young Bucks match territory, and
it's the all request hour. Just yell out what move you want to do, and we'll do it.
Pretty much, yeah. They did that. There was a reasonable amount of super kicks. I believe I counted 5. There was a dance break in the middle of the match that the Bucks ended with a super kick and a total heel move that got them cheered. And they took far too much of this match, in my opinion. They took a solid 80% of the match, in my estimation, at least.
Yeah, Private Party, I very much enjoyed it. I was in their corner. The 2 alternate costumes for Montez Ford.
Yeah, they're both quite a bit shorter than Montez Ford, so when he does his craziness, it's a little bit more impressive because if you're a tall man, you know it's hard to do some of that stuff, but these guys are crazy athletic, and the few spots they got were very impressive, and I would have preferred to see a more competitive match. Perhaps when they wrestle, they're getting the run back on the second show of AEW, Wednesday Night Dynamite. So speaking of Wednesday Night Dynamite, the Bucks won with a Meltzer driver, to the surprise of no one.
We ran off immediately after, and then there was
New York Wrecking Crew came out to beat on the Young Bucks, and then Hangman Page ran out to clear the ring and cut a promo about how he's going to beat Chris Jericho, and that was the show. Speaking of AEW Wednesday Night Dynamites, remember a while ago we said that the real war was not between WWE and AEW, it was between NXT and AEW? Well, that became a lot more of a actual real thing. Today, WWE announced that NXT will be airing live on the USA. Well, not live, but will be airing Wednesdays 8 to 10, the same time slot as Wednesday Night Dynamite, on the USA Network. It will be expanding the 2 hours. Vince McMahon's going to have presumably more involvement. I don't know how much. I'm not going to speculate on how that's going to affect the product. We'll wait and see. But we will have a Wrestling War to review every day, every show now. We'll talk about ratings for both and stuff like that. So it's going to be busy because I guess we'll be reviewing head-to-head now. NXT and Wednesday Night Dynamite. So that's going to be a lot. But
for those of you still loyal to the network as we are, they'll be up. NXT will be up the day after on Thursdays.
Yes. So it'll go a little bit afterwards. So if you still watch on the network, I primarily watch on the network Thursdays. But it's not going to be a situation like Raw and SmackDown where you have to wait weeks for the exclusivity period to go away. It'll be on the next day. So you don't even have to set your DVR for it. You just have to have an active WWE Network subscription, and you'll be able to catch both with minimal effort.
Hooray.
But yeah, that's going to be big. It'll be interesting to see how that affects things. I think we'll see. There'll be less of a wonder of like when so and so is going to get called up, because they're going to have stars on that brand. So it's going to affect call-ups and such. So it'll be interesting to see how that evolves the product. As long as takeovers stay great, I'll be unaffected, and if I get like some good matches, it'll be fine. I think NXT could expand. I think 2 hours is more than I would like, but I think there's definitely a lot of people don't get on the show for long periods of time, and I think this extra hour will help with that.
Starved at all, which they aren't. But should that situation occur, what we just had, a giant 16-man fucking tournament.
Yeah, and you can have main roster guys show up and mix it up with this extra time. And who wouldn't want to see
wild card?
Who wouldn't want to see AJ Styles, down for a match against Johnny Gargano, or Daniel Bryan against Adam Cole, or something like that? The prospects are there for some good matches, as long as they can still have the good matches we're accustomed to for NXT. It's unlikely that Vince McMahon will actually be at the shows, but he will have his fingerprints in some of it because it's on USA, and it's a big deal now. So hopefully Triple H maintains his creative vision, just with perhaps just a little bit of main roster verbiage. But it'll be live some weeks, but I think they'll tape it mostly. I'm not quite sure how it's going to work out. A lot will depend on the ratings and who's winning. That's what a lot of it's going to come down to. So, NXT TakeOver Toronto 2. We're going to breeze through a lot of these because we don't want to be here for an hour. It's coming up against our bedtimes.
So we'll breeze through initially with the beginning. Breezango.
Yeah, so this is stuff that happened. This was taped before for last week's NXT. So Breezango beat the Forgotten Sons of Anarchy in a tag team match. Fandango looked good. Tyler Breeze looked good. Forgotten Sons were, as you would expect, and nothing ventured, nothing lost. Jordan Miles beat Cameron Grimes in a match that was okay, and just okay. I didn't really.
Yeah, good. It was a good move.
Yeah.
Keeping it on the pre-show, just the crowd wasn't with it. It was
Yeah, they didn't really know who either guy was. Jordan Miles went with the 450. That was my pick to win it. I think that's the right call. He can have a one-off television match with Adam Cole, and if they have a good match, it can be a star-making performance for him. You know, the possibilities here are good. I think he's he has a better chance of getting over than Cameron Grimes does at this moment in time, at least. Street Profits surprisingly beat the Undisputed Era, Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish. To retain the tag team titles. They are still on their way to the main roster, and there is a spoiler from the tapings that leaked that I will not share now. We'll get to it when we get to it, but the outcome was surprising, but it made a little more sense knowing what happens later. Street Profits won after Frog Splash from Montez Ford. This was a great match. Best match the Street Profits have had. I gotta say that Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish are probably, well, I mean, you have to give big ups to Roderick Strong for when he was carrying the tag team load there too. But that triumvirate is arguably the best tag team in NXT history, just based on the body of work. I mean, and that's saying a lot, because you got some great teams in there. You got DIY, you got the Revival, you got American Alpha, a lot of good teams.
We talk about sauce. They have the sauce.
Kyle
O'Reilly is just bathed in it.
He oozes sauce out of every pore.
And Bobby Fish, I think he sacrificed a tooth for this match, or does he just always have that tooth missing?
I don't know, but yeah, it looked nasty. It looked like he got hit pretty hard in the mouth there.
Because they did, on the week after the promo, they were backstage and they were doing it. They're like, his tooth was gone.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know if he has.
Did he get hurt in that ladder match? Did he lose the tooth in the ladder match?
That might have been.
Yeah, that might have been where it happened, and maybe his implant fell out or something like that.
He's got it in with crazy glue and duct tape.
Yeah, this was a fine match. I would go as high as 3 3/4 stars.
Yeah, 3.5.
This takeover overall was one of the weaker takeovers, but it was still pretty good. Io Shirai beat Candice LeRae by TKO. In the match that should have been for the women's title, because it was a lot more over and a lot better than the women's title match, and arguably the best match on the show.
Yeah, that's fair. I didn't think much of Candice LeRae when they started going.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, okay, whatever. But she really picked it up as the match went along.
The match built wonderfully. To Peter's point, it wasn't much of anything when it started. I was kind of looking at my phone, looking up every now and again. But by the 5-6 minute mark of this 15-minute match, my phone was on the other side of the couch, and I was glued to the television screen. Because these women really brought their A game and tore the house down in a match that is front runner for best women's match of the year, and probably, depending upon how you felt about the main event, this was probably the best match on the show. I would give it 4.5 stars.
A solid 4.
Velveteen Dream wrestled Pete Dunne and Roderick Strong for the North American Championship, and he retained after stealing the pin from Roderick Strong on Pete Dunne. Pete Dunne taking the losing fall there. This match was good, but not as good as you'd expect from the men involved. I don't know what was missing. Like, I can't point to anything and be like, well, this was bad here, or they could have done this to make it better. It just, I don't know, just didn't click the way I thought it would.
I think there was just that sort of a burst of energy, or someone, a real drive even above what they normally put out. Probably would have pushed this into it would have pushed into a breakout.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Would have
Position.
pushed into 4-star territory. As it sits, it wasn't a bad match. Roderick Strong comes up short again. It seemed like this was the time to pull the trigger on putting all the belts on the Undisputed Era. I don't know what their plan for the North American title is. I think Velveteen Dream's ready to come up. I said about 6 months ago, I think he needs 6 more months. But he definitely looks ready now.
He's in the commercials for their WWE apps or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he's going to come up now that NXT's going on USA, September 18th. But who knows? He's ready to move up to Raw or SmackDown, and I think he's had the North American title for better part of 6 months now, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So you could put it on someone else. No one's going to criticize you for taking the belt off of him too soon.
Yeah. But normally, I feel like how these things have gone in the past, they'll just ride them till they're out.
Yeah.
And they'll find something else.
I trust in the booking of NXT. Usually in the end it makes sense. So I assume they have a plan for everything, and I'll let it play out before I pass judgment. I'd give that one 3.5 stars.
Yeah, same.
Then we had Shayna Baszler and Mia Yim. This match was better than I thought it would be. I'll get the positives out of the way. It's better than I thought it would be. Mia Yim worked very hard, and she busted out a couple of cool moves, including a Code Red off the top rope, which is a spot that I saw a lot on this night. And they worked each other's arms over. That was the story of the match. Shayna couldn't keep her choke in because her arm was too hurt. But then at the very end there, she transitioned into a leg choke and got the submission win over Mia Yim, who was a filler opponent that they did not do a great job of turning into a believable contender. And the whole story was built on how Shayna gonna do it without her flukies. But she was women's champion for like a year before they even were in the company. So
yeah.
The story was weak.
It was like, I feel like it was more like, oh, you hurt my friends and stuff, and now they're trying to be like, what if she was a babyface for this match, despite her bullying on the entire women's division last year and this year and constantly. She'll be a babyface for this match. We'll just make Mia the heel here.
Yeah. This was no better than your average TV main event. I would give it 2.5.
Yeah, strong 2.5.
Then we had Adam Gargano versus
Johnny Cole?
Yeah, Johnny Cole. Adam Cole versus Johnny Gargano in a Don't Call It a 3 Stages of Hell match.
Legal department wouldn't let us use that name.
Yeah. So first fall was a straight wrestling match that ended in a disqualification when Johnny Gargano got frustrated and hit Adam Cole with a chair, which was dumb. The only reason that would make sense is if he immediately pinned him to even the score, but he didn't. That fall went for another 10 minutes. He did eventually win with the Gargano escape, I believe. And then we had the gimmick cage match with all the barbed wire and kendo sticks and shit stuck to it. And this it was in this third fall here. The the 7th fall I'd see these two men wrestle, that the match kind of jumped the shark a little bit for me. They had to go bigger than what they had. I think I think maybe another 2 out of 3 falls match was too much. I think perhaps if you had just stuck them in a cage to begin with and said, here, go have a 30-minute cage match.
Yeah, that's sort of like everyone was just cutting to the chase on that one. We were
It-
all like, well, I don't. If the third one's gonna be really cool and zany, why don't we got the first two?
It would have been a little bit better because we would have limited the kickouts. Because, oh boy, were there kickouts. I think I don't really have a set barometer for how many kickouts is too many for me, but we reached that point here. It was too many kickouts for me, and some of the moves they were kicking out of, like 2 Panama Sunrises got kicked out of, a top rope Canadian Destroyer got kicked out of, and when they were on, before the finish was they yeeted themselves through 2 tables, but they missed one. So they only went through 1 table.
I was lucky. I was like, oh god, at least they caught one.
Yeah. And for a moment there, I thought they were going to do a much bigger move off of that because it was a thicker table and it was really securely affixed to the top corner of the cage. So it looked like it was a platform they were going to do. And I'm like, oh my god, is Adam Cole going to try to hit a fucking Panama Sunrise off that fucking table? Thankfully, Sanity won the day. And they just yeeted themselves for the table.
Just do the Shane McMahon jump off the high thing. It's fine. It's a great spot.
Yeah. So this went 46 minutes, I think.
Yeah, 3. It was each fall. I think they basically just split it into 3 15-minute
Right.
splits. Maybe they leaned a little time on the cage because people wanted to see that.
It was, I think, maybe a little bit too long, and they had a lot. They kicked out of a lot of shit, and it was, it was a lot to handle. It was still a great match, probably the weakest of the 3, so I would give that, I'd go as high as 4. All right, yeah, that's fine.
They used a fire.
That's acceptable. Yeah, that'd be rough. Yeah, you got a little bit on the back when Adam Cole scraped himself. But they have a lot of reasons why they can't. So I don't blame them too much for that. All right, so then we had SummerSlam, which we can just blow through real quickly because there's like only 2 things I want to talk about. I didn't watch any of the pre-show. I can't comment on any of that. Becky Lynch beat Natalya in a match that was okay, and nothing more. Goldberg speared Dolph Ziggler a bunch. Yeah, AJ and in the club wrestled Ricochet for the U.S. Championship. AJ retained after some. I don't know. I think on Raw the next night he was just wearing the pants. Yeah, just wanted his special SummerSlam gear. This match was fine, but you'd expect a lot better from the guys involved. Bayley beat Ember Moon in a match that was fine, but could have been a lot better, and no one gave a shit about. Yeah. Yeah. Um. So yeah, Kevin Owens and Shane McMahon win. I did not. Yes. Ah, right. Yeah, that's pretty great. Um, Kevin Owens wins with a stunner. This match was overbooked, but it got over the crowd. Turned it around a little bit when Charlotte wrestled Trish. Charlotte got the win. Trish took a bow for not having wrestled in quite a while. Trish looked fine. Pretty good, actually. And this was a fine match. Kofi Kingston and Randy Orton ended in about the stupidest way that you could end their match. Yeah, they were just brawling outside, and then the bell rang. Like, I couldn't fucking hear it. They weren't, like, milking it for anything. It was just like, bam, it's over. Done. I guess, but, like, again, I didn't hear them count to 10. And then fucking Kofi laid him out with his move anyway. So why not just have the guy win? Then the show. Yeah. Um. Fucking. They're just going for the motions. Then it got great because the Fiend came out and he has a remix of his own theme, which is fucking badass. He came out with a lantern that was his own severed head. Like everything about the character was presented awesome.
And the announcers didn't say anything.
Oh, that was the best fucking part. Silence from the announcers. Bray Wyatt has gotten himself into tremendous shape. He's got a weird body. He's perfectly tapered all the way down.
Yep.
Because his shoulders are huge, his chest's a little smaller, his waist's a little smaller. All the way down to his ankles. He dominated the match. Finn got a brief comeback when he went for Sister Abigail, and then he slapped on the mandible claw, got the pin, and then had his exit, which was almost as awesome as his entrance.
Yep.
They had a great shot of him sitting on top of the ramp. That was pretty awesome.
Side note, I feel like Finn Balor is now the John Constantine of WWE. You have a supernatural themed wrestler, have him go up against him.
And he's got the demon inside him, Etrigan.
Yeah.
Well, actually, no, so he would be more the Etrigan.
I want him coming out as like, no, I want to come out in like a fucking like Yu Yu Hakusho tribute gear. I don't know what that would look like because
Depends on the character, I guess.
He just wore like a Japanese school kid's uniform.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and there were arcs where he wore other stuff. Yeah, that was great. And then the main event was also really great. Seth Rollins and Brock Lesnar for the Universal title. Seth got the win in what was a really fun and entertaining match. I especially liked the part where Brock picked him up by his waist tape and fucking went to hammer throw him.
They drew some a more vigorous match out of Brock than I usually see in the pay-per-views. I feel like he's like he's made a turn because he's on TV more. I see
Yeah.
emotion coming out of his face. He's using his words more.
Brock.
His therapist make a breakthrough.
Yeah,
So
Brock
what's
has greatness in him. He always has. It's just a matter of whether or not he's gonna show up to work. And when he's in there with the right guy, he's like, okay, we'll go to work. We'll have some fun here. And it was still a lot of suplexes. So if you're like, ugh, I hate it when he just suplexes guys, there was a lot of that too. But there was also an awesome spot where he like moved the ring about 4 feet when he slammed Seth into it. Seth got him on the table, hit a big frog splash, rolled him in the ring, hit another big frog splash and a curb stomp, and he got the win. And it was great because in one match they took Seth Rollins, who had really cooled off and was booed when he came out, and turned him into a hero that people were going crazy for when he won. So that's a successful segment. All right, so yeah, that's SummerSlam and all these shows. There was a lot to talk about. We had to fit it all in here because we're up against the wire. And we'll be back later this week with review of NXT and all that stuff. So until then, be well, stay safe, and something 95.